what came up for me in one of these sessions was, oh my God, and it came with a rush of tears and feelings, which was, I'm terrified to be a mother.
Mm-hmm.
Am terrified to be a mother. And then, oh my God, I sat with that for a second. Then another wave brought up, I'm terrified to be a mother like my mother had been. And I didn't want to. And it was, I was doing a lot of work on my mother wounds and relationship with my mother, which was, wrought with a lot of dysfunction and challenges. So this wasn't surprising at some level, but to have something so deep in my unconscious, of course, my body is
in protective mode.
It's in protective mode. Keep a teenage looking body, don't function fully as a woman because, this is all going on under the surface.
Welcome to The Rainbow Connection. This podcast was designed for mothers who are finding their way through life after loss. Whether you're grieving, trying to conceive again, newly pregnant, or holding hope in your heart for what's to come, this space is for you. Each week, you'll hear real and tender stories of love, heartbreak, healing, and the babies who continue to shape us. I'm your host, Kristin Mundy, a mother, doula, and a woman who's walked this path too. May these conversations remind you that you are not alone, that your baby is never forgotten, and that hope and grief can live here together. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to tell you about Mother Like No Other, a special community for women who are navigating the tender season of life after loss. Inside Mother Like No Other, you'll find a warm, supportive space of moms who truly get it, plus practical tools to help you through the hard days. You'll have access to a private online community where you can connect with me, an experienced doula, and other moms navigating the same journey. Each month, we gather for live workshops to connect and learn, covering topics like supporting your fertility journey, grounding strategies, self-advocacy, and ways to nurture your mind, body, and soul. We also bring in guest speakers to share their expertise and inspiration. The best part? It's only $22 a month. No long-term commitment, just real support when you need it most. If you're ready to feel more grounded, connected, and held through this season, come join us at thedoulalife.ca/mother. You do not have to go through this journey alone. And by joining us inside Mother Like No Other, you won't have to. In today's episode of The Rainbow Connection, it is truly an honor to be sitting down with Dr. Gertrude Lyons. This conversation felt deeply full circle for me. One of those moments where you can feel just how aligned two paths are, even if they arrived in very different ways. Dr. Gertrude brings such a grounded wisdom to the topic of motherhood and identity and healing, and I found myself nodding along again and again as she spoke. Together, we talk about the quiet yet often unspoken grief that so many of us mothers carry, the parts of themselves that can get lost or reshaped or pushed aside through motherhood, and especially through experiences of loss. This episode isn't about fixing or bypassing any of the hard parts. It's about telling the truth, naming what so many women feel but rarely get to say out loud, and exploring what becomes possible when we give ourselves permission to remain whole. I'm so grateful for this conversation, and I have a feeling it will meet many of you exactly where you need to be met. All right, well, enough from me. Let's hear from Dr. Gertrude. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Rainbow Connection. Today, we have a very special guest. I'm sitting down with Dr. Gertrude Lyons. We did a little podcast swap, so I got to sit with her before on her podcast, and now she gets to be with us today. Hi, Dr. Gertrude. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Kristin. I loved our conversation, so I'm glad we get to keep going and have this opportunity.
So grateful that our worlds have collided, and I hope that we can continue to chat, right?
Yes.
Dr. Gertrude has so much beautiful offerings to share, especially with our community. And I'm really looking forward to, if you haven't, dove into her work yet, I'm really looking forward to introducing you to her and all her beautiful offerings. But before we dive into that, Dr. Gertrude, why don't you share a little bit about yourself with our listeners?
Okay. Well, I'd love to do that. Although of course, it's always a little shy, but, so particularly, when it comes to how I, got to be doing what I'm doing, it was engaging myself in my own journey of motherhood and mothering. So I have 2 daughters. They are now 29. I almost can't say it. 29. And one is turning 27 in a couple weeks. So needless to say, I've been through, and it continues, right? This mothering journey never ends, and it just takes different forms. And so it's there. Wait, I have to pause for a sec. Am I telling my mothering journey?
Let's talk about just who you are. Let's say
just who I am and what I'm doing.
My name is Dr. Gertrude. I am a mother of 2 girls. I am also the author of my powerful
so
book.
just sure that stuff first. Okay, great.
And then I'll ask you more about your girls.
Thank you. I know. Okay, got it. Yeah. So, well, as you said, Kristin, my name is Dr. Gertrude Lyons, and I'm an author, speaker, TEDx speaker. I published my first book this year called Rewrite the Mother Code: From Sacrifice to Stardust, A Cosmic Approach to Motherhood. I call it my 4th child.
I bet
my 3rd child being my dissertation and getting a doctorate. And then I have 2 Earth babies, Morgan and Hannah, and they are now 29 and almost 27. So I've been a life coach for 30 years now, and working couples, families, individuals in all forms of self-actualization, breath work, and kind of bringing all that many healing modalities together. But have, over the course of my career, at various times, really focused on mothering and motherhood. And it's what I did my doctorate on and completed in 2017, because of my own experience and my coaching experience and just the whole richness of that topic that we'll get more into. But so I lead retreats, I do coaching, I have a podcast, and just trying, in all those arenas to support, this work that I'm doing, and particularly to support women and mothers.
I love that. And obviously that is very much in tune with what we do here as well, right? We love supporting our moms. And I'm so glad that we get to talk to a very well-seasoned one. When you said that your book was your 4th baby, I was like, I bet it was, because there's so much heart and effort and energy and passion and all the things that probably went into that book. But I would love to start from the beginning. Obviously motherhood is a huge part of what you do. It's everything. It's become everything of what you do, right? So I would love to hear what, your motherhood journey has looked like and how that led you to kind of where you are now.
To supporting, in that arena. So I'll talk first, because I can't quite talk about my motherhood journey without first talking about getting married. And when I got engaged, I had a boss. I was working in litigation consulting at the time, a very different career and arena that ended up having connections, but we won't get into that, of how I got to be doing what I'm doing. But when I came in all excited to announce I'd gotten engaged, she's like, well, very kind of gruff about it. Well, the best advice I can give you is to do premarital counseling. Right. So I'm like, well, okay, where's the celebration? But I was 24 years old. I'm young, I think I've, found my soulmate, the perfect guy. Why would I think that there was problems, or I should? Now, he was going through a divorce. So, there was
projecting on that you a little bit, right?
Yeah. Projecting, a little bit of projection going on there. But at the same time, this was my first glimmer of having someone say something like that, not just brushing it away and acting like I have it already all figured out and I don't want to rock the boat. But listening to my intuition and my gut, I'm like, I think there might be something here, and I mean, there's probably a couple red flags if I were telling the truth, which I didn't want to do. But if I were, and then I don't know, I just had a bit of foresight to look at like his parents who were divorced and remarried. So looking at our families, so first looking at his family, second marriages, alcoholism, and then looking at mine who weren't divorced yet, but we're living very separate lives. And I actually never really experienced them as a loving couple. Right. So I'm like, how should I expect to know how to do this? And maybe he's onto something. It can't hurt to just, talk to somebody. So once I realized that this is something is really worth considering and why not? Let's try it. Then there was the asking my fiance. And, this is 1989, 90. People weren't doing life coaching. People weren't doing, there was therapy, but that was like last resort kind of thing, that people were doing. So,
and you definitely didn't speak about it or,
no,
it was
exactly.
Very
it was like,
right?
Exactly. So, this is kind of, I'm saying some of these because these are my first like forays into going outside the box to follow, what felt right to me, which then plays very much into my mothering journey. So we didn't have email back then or the internet. So I wrote him a letter, a handwritten letter saying that I thought this would be a good idea and like maybe we could work on our communication. And he huffed and gruffed and like, what do you have skeletons in your closet? Why would we need to do this? Blah, blah, blah. But then, I'm so grateful, honestly, that he did say yes, because we both went into it, unsure. He was probably more skeptical than I was. But after that first session, really realized, oh, this is something,
There's something
like
here. Yeah.
There's something here. And so that really launched us into, we decided to work with this man and do I don't know what we called it back then, if it was therapy or premarital counseling, to prepare us for our wedding. And, so it was the first time I heard about writing a vision for something, a big endeavor in your life and looking at what we wanted versus what our families were telling us. So it was, the precept to everything that I would build on, to come. And it felt like it was our first creation. We created something together and got to see what this was like and work through stuff and fight and argue and all these things that, we thought that you should avoid if you're about to get married. And then once we did, this person, the therapist was like, okay, well now the best thing you can do for your couple is work on yourself. Go on your own journey, work on your self-actualization, your growth and development, emotionally, physically healing, spiritually eventually came into it too, for ourselves. So we decided pretty early on. And I mean, he asked us, when do you think, do the two of you want to have children? We're both like, yeah, of course. Like, had we
children are such a conceptual thought, right? Until you realize like what actually children do or can do to a marriage and how hard it really is, right?
Oh, right. But we were like following the script, right? Yeah, we're getting married. Like, of course we're going to have children. Like that's what you do. That's what you do. I now, really support women to do that much more mindfully and discerning. And so we said, yeah, we do, but not necessarily right away. Is like, great. I think it would be great. Spend a few years on your own, yourselves and being married and really work on that. So that's really basically what we did. And then, we hit a point a few years later. We're like, all right, I think it's time we'd like to start this journey. So my journey, which I share a lot about, I wasn't expecting to write as much about my own journey in my book, which ended up being very vulnerable, but I think it was important. Well, it was important for me. And I've heard it was, it's been very enlightening, to go into something like that with now some tools, with more awareness, more consciousness. And, right away went off birth control and didn't get a period for a few months. So I'm like, oh, geez, and I had never been regular. I started menstruating late. And so I'm like, well, this doesn't seem particularly surprising. But that ended up being my first experience with seeing, kind of a more holistic view and wanting to do something, maybe more as a team effort versus just, go to the doctor and do what they say, which would have been, had I not done some growth work and started thinking a little bit more for myself, it's like, well, just find the nicest hospital in Chicago and be on your way, which is one, when I went to my gynecologist and told her I'm not, I talk about this a lot in my TEDx talk, just what it felt like to go into a medical practitioner's office, highly regarded, very renowned. And the only line of thought and questioning was to give me medication, right? Like right off the bat. And I'm not anti-medication. It's just with my now experience, I really wanted, I'm like, wait, I'm upset. Like this is the only way, the only route. And I would have just jumped on that ahead.
Well, that there's something else rather than the status quo, right? There's got to be more to this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I was starting to, and we went into it that we knew this would be a journey and, we wanted it to, be something that we were taking conscious steps toward. So when she said, okay, well, I'll give you this medication, it should help you ovulate. And if in a couple months, if that doesn't, kick in and work, here's the number for a fertility specialist. I'm like,
it's the next step,
I am just getting started, right?
So young too, right?
I know. Yeah. I'm in my 20s, like still. And this is what you've got for me. And so I was mad, honestly. I was angry about it, that because I knew that wasn't the only thing I could be doing here, right? So I sought guidance. I went to another medical practitioner who was an MD, also acupuncturist, so had a mix of Eastern and Western medicine. And for her to just look at me, and kind of said, well, have you noticed you're underweight? And I'm like, well, I didn't really think of myself as underweight, but yeah, I'm thin. She's like, that could definitely have, I'm like, that's such an obvious thing, right? That's not some big, like deep awareness. And but then the thing that she said that was, I think, so key was, and I could tell you to gain weight, but I have the sense that, there's, what I would suggest is that you also kind of work on emotionally and internally, like what's going on for you. Because there's our bodies, work in conjunction with our emotions, and what a blessing, right? To have that brought into the picture. And I was, engaged in my work and seeing a therapist, and we did some body work that ended up bringing up to the surface. So body work it's kind of like breath work, only you're getting in different postures and really opening space in your body. And, there's tons of research and all that about how our body holds our emotions from childhood, from, things that we're hanging on to that in these modalities can help release. And what came up for me in one of these sessions was, oh my God, and it came with a rush of tears and feelings, which was, I'm terrified to be a mother. I'm terrified to be a mother. And then, oh my God, I sat with that for a second. Then another wave brought up, I'm terrified to be a mother like my mother had been. And I didn't want to. And it was, I was doing a lot of work on my mother wounds and relationship with my mother, which was, wrought with a lot of dysfunction and challenges. So this wasn't surprising at some level, but to have something so deep in my unconscious, of course, my body is
in protective
it's
mode, right?
it's in protective mode. It, like keep a teenage looking body, don't function fully as a woman because, this is all going on under the surface. And it was such like to me, and then these are the kinds of things in my own experience that fueled like, oh my God, if I had just zipped down that medication, I would have missed this whole opportunity for this deep healing, later to realize like, and it wasn't just her, this was like generations, like this didn't just come from, I had challenges with my mother. I could feel that it was much deeper and, way more, than just our relationship. So to have that up, I'm like, okay, this is what this is about. Right. So I ended up, once I had that breakthrough, within a couple months, I was menstruating. And it's like, okay, should we start trying to have a baby now?
Now, when you had that breakthrough, did you do anything to help process that? Or was it just the needing to know that was like the key for you? Like, oh, I just need to speak to this fear. Or did you actually need to work to that change something to that fear?
No, that's a great question, Kristin, because I think sometimes, you have a cathartic release like that. And that, is enough. It just creates space. And it's like, oh, no wonder, and then all these things that I thought about from not menstruating until I was 17 to, looking at like, why, what is this? So yes, then there was, because I was in consistent therapy and in group therapy, at the time. So I brought it in there to, to keep kind of, oh, how do I mother myself around this? Like, what do I need to now give myself in that regard to create safety, to understand like, oh, okay, I've done some work now. I see that it is possible to break generational patterns too. And this is where my husband and I had really been working together to look at everything from, we had stopped drinking alcohol to like, what are things that we can do in our lives to make them, more holistic and conscious and try and avoid, some of the patterns,
right?
Repeating patterns. Yeah. And so having something like this came up, it really struck pretty deeply. And I think strengthened that awareness and willingness to like try new behaviors and understand we're going to do the best we can. We're not saying we're going to do it perfectly, and we're still going to mess up plenty, but some of these big things, there are things we can do, and
we could be conscious at least. Like what?
Yes.
Just that consciousness. Like I know you already said it, but what a gift, not just for you, but for the children that you're going to call in. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Kristin. And that it felt that way. And so, a few months later, we decided to, officially begin the conception journey. And I know every woman's journey is different, and but somehow I think it's fairly common in our minds. It's like, okay, like now that I've decided and look, I've cleared the way, like this should just happen.
I pulled the bully. Like I've been preventing for so many years. This should be so easy. Right?
This should just be so easy, right? And months are going by and it's not. And so, that when I can look back on it, I can say with gratitude because I was able to conceive and bear two daughters. But that I'm again glad I kind of just gave it space and time and learned about my body and learned about my cycles, opened myself up to that. And that, I'm going to say, culminated in a way, another kind of big epiphany awareness. Only this one was, I would say, kind of a combination of maybe more spiritual as well as also another breaking of kind of cultural patterns and beliefs, which was every year, my husband, and we did this for like 30 years, would go on a sacred travel trip, a pilgrimage of sorts with a mixed group of people and travel to sacred sites around the world. And that was part of our spiritual growth and development. process doesn't sound quite like practice. That's it. Yeah, practice. I didn't try and do practices throughout the year, but this was kind of our get away from everything and focus on our purpose, our meaning, and do it through the lens of other cultures. And we were in Ireland, and we were, I think I had been trying at that point for about 7 or 8 months. So not like it hadn't been years, but
long enough though, right? Yeah.
Long enough where you're like, oh, what I may have to explore something and, look at this further. And we're on this trip, and, Ireland is a very Catholic country. So there's a lot of Mary energy there and Mary sites. We were also trying to tune into, and something that we did was very different for us because it had been a very private, is we shared with the group that we were on this journey, and we'd love their support, and we'd love, we're going to be, this is a focus of our work on this trip. And people were wonderful. Right. And we had fun with it. We made up little rituals at different sites and all of this. And then we got to this off the side of the road, Mary Grotto, that our bus driver recommended we stop at because he had taken many people there and they always had, a lovely experience, whatever. So we go there, we, do what we kind of do at these places, meditate in silence and pray at Mary if you want to. And, this is, every denomination or not, or an atheist, this isn't a prescribed, this is everybody kind of doing their own thing. And we were about to leave, and this woman on the trip, one of the women, just starts singing Ave Maria, like just she has a beautiful voice, number one. So we all just stopped, closed our eyes, and kind of, I don't consider myself someone with a great voice. So I was listening, and tuning in. And I have to say, Kristin, it was my first, I would say, spiritual experience where I felt like I heard a voice. I heard something within me. I had a direct experience with spirit, and the message that came in, and really just pierced my heart. I could still, so many years ago, was that you and Rich, it's my husband, are a family, whether you have a child or not. You are a woman, whether you have a child or not. And it's something that I'm sure somebody probably had even said to me before, but you're like, yeah, but I really want to have a baby. But it felt real and true and profound. And it's like, wow, we are already a family. Like, yes, we want this, but this doesn't make me something else, or not make me something else, or make me less than, and I will have lots of feelings if I don't, this doesn't happen, but it's okay. Like, I'm okay. And then being able to share that with my husband and us be together in that, it really then got us more connected and closer, and to kind of be the messenger, of that message. And it wasn't like, oh, don't have a family. So, okay, we'll keep trying. We'll see where it takes us. Right. And we conceived the following month, and
isn't that how it happens? So sometimes I feel like something very similar happened to us too. It was like a huge, profound moment. And then the next month, it was when we conceived our daughter. Yeah.
And so I'm saying a lot about this part of the story, because then I lost myself, all sorts of things keep happening. Right. But, even just to give this glimpse and glimmer, this is what, through the journey then of my motherhood until my daughters were in high school, college, when then you have time to reflect. But, there's so much more potential in this experience, in this happening. And yes, having a baby is a beautiful thing. And however it happens, and if it happens, and, I know and you have shared just dealing with loss and, the many ups and downs that happen in this motherhood journey are also full of treasures and gifts and potential for healing and our own transformation, whether we have a soul that I think, comes to us for a few weeks to a lifetime, we're impacted. This has informed my experience. I am not the same person that I was, before, during, and after. And I think that's what really clued me in, that this is something that, and not a lot of people talk about it, right? Now, this wasn't what the mom group I was part of was talking about it. Now I was part of a growth environment, and not until after my second daughter was born did I leave my economic analyst job and start veering toward, this work. Specifically, did I realize that it does take work, and we're in a culture and an environment that doesn't support us in so many ways as mothers, right? Like that doesn't support us in so many ways as mothers. And we know that, and let alone something like this, right? So as I progressed, on the journey and had our second daughter, which was another beautiful experience. And both of them were home births. I think we talked about this maybe on my podcast, but again, kind of doing something differently, not just because it was what resonated with our values, right? It resonated with the vision we had as a couple, what I had, what I call now my mother code that I wrote and, came up with myself, versus following the codes of, there's only one place you have a baby and it's a hospital with a doctor. It's like, you can just know that there's other choices and like choose as mindfully as possible. So the discerning process of that wasn't that hard for me. I don't know. It just felt right. And I was glad to be able to substantiate it with enough evidence to feel like it was the right choice for us. But shortly after second daughter was born, the thing that shifted for me, and it wasn't until I really reflected back on it, was I went into a next stage of motherhood, and, in the loss factor, I started losing myself, right? Like a fear factor that I didn't have before when I was kind of leading the family in growth and development, like, hey, let's do this growth work thing. And, and doing work on yourself. Yeah, it's painful, but it's worth it. It was kind of like, nope. I have these two babies now, and, I don't want to rock the boat in this marriage. And so there was a way we were able to still like parent consciously. Like parenting became our project as a couple, not our couple as the project, but the kids. And, let's, still try and keep a mindful thought to this, but I wasn't working on myself anymore. And I really
were giving 200%, right? 200% to your kids. Yeah.
Yes. And that's where, once I had this realization, so fast forward now, our daughters are this age. I'm on another one of these pilgrimages, and I'm like, oh my God, like it was kind of this like, what happened? Where did I go? Like, what happened?
What was that? Yeah.
What was it? There were so many things that were beautiful about it, but gosh, I started making choices that were all about the kids or all about what my husband wanted. And less and less bottom of the list was me, and I worked, as a coach during that time. So
isn't it so funny though, too, even when you are helping other people, you're like, whoops, like do as I say, not as I do. But I totally can relate and empathize with that so much.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing? And it's like there's like this level of denial, like, no, I'm still doing it. We're still seeing a couples coach. I'm in I'm
doing all the things.
But, and I'd have these glimmers of knowing, right? Like knowing that there was material there that I'm like, I'm not going to go into that. We're not going to do.
Well, because some things also take a lot of energy and space and time. And you're like, well, I'm already given 200%. Like, I don't know if I could open that up right now. Like that seems really big, right?
Yeah, exactly. But, we were in Nepal when this one happened. And we were seeing different healers, and this one woman healer, shaman, she was such a beautiful presence. And, she talked to us, and then there was time to like kind of get a blessing, from her. But she was like one of those huggers, like that's how she gave you your blessing. And I remember being in her arms and suddenly just like breaking open sobbing. I didn't even know why, at the time it was just like, what is happening here? And some of what we're talking about started to come flooding in. It's like, you have kind of left yourself, right? And it's okay to feel some, like, let's look at it like, encouragement to, kind of this internal encouragement. It's like, you're okay. You'll be okay. It'll be okay. You'll be okay. And that was my first experience of kind of feeling like really held, by a divine feminine presence and feeling safe and okay. Like, I think we could maybe pick this back up again.
So what did that look like? Yeah. What did that look like for you? Because
well, I'll tell you what it first looked like, because at first it wasn't just like, let's dive back into that deep pain, that deep work and see what comes up. It came more first from an intellectual space. It's like,
where can we fit this in?
Yeah. Well, where can we fit this in? But also like, let's study this. So that's when I decided to go back to school and get my doctorate. So I'd already gotten a master's degree in psychology, and I'm like, and a second master's degree in transformational leadership and coaching, focusing on family. But this one, I was like, what if I had this hard of a time, and I know how amazing and beautiful and like expansive it can be to work on yourself and what, motherhood brings up for you, that you can heal. And I'm surrounded by people who are, in favor of this.
Yeah.
And it's good stuff, get off the train. What's going on here? So it came more like that, I think, was my safety mechanism. Like, let's just intellectualize it first and see what's going on here. But luckily the program I was a part of, you couldn't just study things. You had to work on it yourself too.
So interesting. It's such a good point though, too, because if you are living a life already of like trying to be conscious, trying to do the things, the right way, and like you find yourself off the track. It's like, wow, what about the people who aren't exposed to this world at all, right? Yeah. Like what are the mothers out there going through? So
I know.
I want to hear what you discovered. I'm like on the edge of my seat being like, tell me.
Yeah, some of the interesting things that I discovered. So what I decided to do, for my dissertation is I did a curriculum evaluation study, and I wanted to prepare women for motherhood. Like that was, raise women's awareness, semi-official title of my dissertation, raising women's awareness of the personal development and transformational opportunity in motherhood, right? Because I figured, and I had now been working with women who didn't have children, women who did. And once you have a child, your brain shifts, you shift, you're in the midst of it. Like, to introduce some of these concepts when you're in that space I knew was going to be even more challenging. So I'm like, and I felt doing work before I had children did help me. It didn't carry me through, but it definitely gave me a foundation.
It definitely moved the needle, right? Yeah.
It moved the needle, right? So that when I did catch myself at those times, like I could say, oh yeah, okay. And there were some awarenesses along the way. It wasn't so black and white that I didn't do anything, but compared to so, I got a group of women together. I did a 12-hour workshop with women who didn't have children, and they were and they kind of rated themselves or named themselves as anything from, I know I don't want to have kids, but I think this could be an interesting topic, and I, like want to explore more, to, I know I want to have kids. It's not happening. I don't know if it's going to happen for me, a whole range, the whole continuum of, and some that had experienced loss, but, hadn't carried a child, through. So, I introduced them to what now I've turned in, in the book, when you distill it and put it in a book, but were some of these beliefs that I had found along the way, and I call them mother codes, right? So I really wanted to try and debunk some of those in the way that what I learned that, hey, guess what? You're already one of the big things that I put in there. Well, it turned out to be a big thing. I didn't think it was a big a deal until I actually shared it in the workshop, which was, yes, we're going to talk about, motherhood itself and, what you think of it now, what it could be, all those things. But I really just want you all to know that you're already mothering, because it's my belief, and that mothering is an energy, and that all women mother, all people mother, really. But, I was keeping it to the women at the time, but all women mother, and we conceive, create, give birth. One choice in that birthing is children. And, but we also, conceive, create, give birth to relationships, careers, pets, anyone, anywhere where we're giving the, elderly parents, which I'm, at a phase of now, anywhere where we're in our caring, creative, nurturing, that cycle of feminine energy, we're mothering. But that the most important person you need to mother is yourself. So, that now has become like kind of so these women, it was like balm to their soul, right? Like, because some of them that had built beautiful businesses, but felt like they weren't, none of that really mattered unless they got married and had a child. Or, some that knew because of, because of physical things within the relationship, couldn't have kids naturally. And did they what if they chose not to, or couldn't? What was, how are they going to deal with that? And what's that going to bring for them? And so that whole range, but then, looking at things like, what does it mean to have our emotions, and what are tools that we have? What is some of the realities of motherhood? So that those aren't hidden behind, the curtain until you're in it, because what I saw in so much of the research is, 90% of women will say they weren't prepared, and nothing could prepare them. And in some ways, until you have an experience, you're not going to know it until you experience it. But there's lots of ways you can, prepare emotionally, physically, and spiritually.
Well, motherhood definitely makes you confront all of those internalized beliefs, right? It really is very confronting. Yeah.
Right. So that's what I wanted, to expose them to. You're going to come up against beliefs. How do you then take, so on this journey, the more you know yourself, your internal mechanisms, and that's when I started making the distinction between our wiring we get from our families. What does motherhood look like in your family? How are you cared for? What are your mother wounds? And start, the more you're, up for the challenge, or willing to, whether it's put your toe in the water or go in deeply, the more you're aware of those things, when it comes up as you're parenting, you'll have some awareness, right? And then you'll know how to, and you can work on having what it means to have strong feelings about all the things that come under
understand why something is so understand why something is so triggering, or just like awareness is the first step, right? It doesn't even mean that you have to act on it, but just being like,
exactly. And then cultural beliefs around motherhood. Yeah,
totally. We actually, before we decided to start trying to get a family, it was very evident to me that I had I have like a very broken relationship with my mother. I have, sometimes our relationships with our mothers, we don't even know that there's damage there, right? But for me, it was very apparent that it was there. And I hired actually an inner child healing coach before we started trying to conceive. And we specifically worked on my mother wound. And it was something that was a totally new concept to me, because obviously your relationship with your mother is very important. But this act of like self-mothering and healing that mother wound was a new concept. And it is such a beautiful thing to be able to do that before you step into the waters yourself. And even if you decide not to, like just being able to have the tools to like heal that in yourself and step into that motherhood journey for yourself is huge. So I love that you have such a strong focus on that. But I would love to hear more about this workshop.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We explored then, what it looks like culturally, just to understand that motherhood is a cultural construct, like how we approach it today, 100 years from now, they're going to laugh at us and like, can you believe they were doing that? Like they thought that was like, when you do, I had them, get online and search like, motherhood advice 100 years ago. Right. And, what is it now? And just look up different topics and just to see, oh my gosh, some of the things that and well, geez, now this was 30 years ago. So we're talking, turn it
Even
like
crazy
1800s, 1900s, early 1900s. They would say things like, don't look at ugly, if you're pregnant, don't look at ugly babies or ugly people. Don't look at ugly people because that could influence your pregnancy and like the baby you were going to have. Yes. Like keeping women like under lock and key so they didn't have their feelings because, that could be too upsetting. Right. I mean, and then there's all the things that happened when we shifted from midwives to doctors and it's horrific, what we did.
Like with birth in general. Yeah.
With birth in general and strange-acting women. And like literally knocking women out, tying their hands down, gagging them. Like, so, I mean, we can't believe it. So who knows what they're going to say about us, with all our fancy equipment and our medicalized and techno birth. I don't know. It's, there's things that are definitely off about what we're doing and some beautiful things, right? Like it's amazing what the technology that's available, but sometimes we get a little nutty about our overuse of it. And that's something I talked about. Like, what kind of experience do you want to have? Do you want to be, a lot of what, and sharing my experience was I wanted to be as present as possible. I wanted to be conscious. So hence, a home birth without medication. But then if you are really afraid of that, you may still make that choice, but let's do some work on where that fear is coming from. What is that fear? I worked with a woman who she was at the workshop and, but then did a couple of years later conceive. And I was working with them as a couple and she's like, don't even talk to me about this non-medicalized birth. Like, that's my paradigm and I don't even want to talk about it. I'm like, that's totally understand. Fine. Your boundary, right? Whatever. I won't try and talk you into it, but if you ever want to know more or, whatever, I'm here. So she would, okay, okay, so tell me now, like, why did you and all this? And as it got closer, she's like, I am really afraid, as we get close to giving birth, many of us are, right? And so we did some breath work when she was, and they did shift even before that. They had shifted from a full-on medical to having a doula and birthing with midwives in the hospital. So they had already made that shift. And then she's like, we want to do a breath work because I'm having a lot of fear come up. So just naming this, like once you've started acclimating to your emotions and trusting your intuition, like not just, oh, I'm afraid. So I'm going back on what I said and I just want to numb myself. She's like, I want to explore this. Like, let's do.
Well, I always say name it to tame it, right? Like we want to figure out what you're exactly scared about so we can actually work on that, because
100%.
Whether you're scared of it or not, like the difference is going to be working on it. Right.
Yeah. It absolutely is. Yeah. So she then, what was interesting then when we did the breath work, she's like, she came out and she's like, oh my God, like, I'm not afraid of the pain. I'm afraid of the aliveness. I'm afraid of like, will I be able to encompass the energy, like the immense, beautiful energy that's going to be there or not. Like it totally reframed what her fear was and contextualize it. And in a way that I don't think she'd even thought she could think of why she was afraid, until she kind of went in, got out of her head and the thinking about it versus the feeling. And what is that deeper feeling? And she managed it beautifully, but she said like that awareness, she said, gave me the courage, the comforted me, and that this was something, I'm afraid of, but it also sounds kind of cool and beautiful. Right? And that was a big thing I worked on in the workshop, is the way our culture treats pain, the way, our birth pain especially is demonized and just something you just shouldn't have. Right. As opposed to, let's, in a lot of spiritual practices and that, I'm not talking about sadistic or masochistic pain, right? We're talking, but pain is a portal, like creative. When you're in a creative process, it's uncomfortable. It was painful writing that book, right? Like just, was it as physically painful? No, but it brought up a lot of pain. And for us to think that, we should just escape it, like, what if we were open to it? Where could it lead us? And pain and pleasure sit, on the razor's edge of each other, right?
I hope you're enjoying this episode. While we take a quick break, I want to speak to the moms listening who are in a very specific, very layered season. If you are parenting a living child after pregnancy or infant loss, whether you recently welcomed your rainbow baby or you are raising a child while grieving another baby, and realizing that this chapter feels a little more complex than you expected, well, I created something with you in mind. Because parenting after loss is not one story. It can look like holding your earthside child while missing the one who isn't here. It can look like loving your baby deeply while navigating fresh grief. It can look like gratitude and heartbreak living side by side. And that can feel incredibly isolating. And that's exactly why I created The Nest. The Nest is a supportive, ongoing community space for mothers raising a living child after pregnancy or infant loss. It's a space where you don't have to explain the coexistence of joy and grief, where identity shifts, relationship strains, nervous system overwhelm, and the very real postpartum experience are spoken about honestly, not minimized. Inside, you'll find trauma-informed postpartum doula support, 2 virtual community calls each month, and most importantly, a village of women who understand this season without you having to translate it. If you've been looking for your village in your Earth Mama era, whether that season feels joyful, heavy, or somewhere in between, you can learn more at thedoulalife.ca/nest. And if you do decide to join us, please use promo code NEST1 to get your first month free. Okay, now let's get back to the episode.
Well, we talk about pain a ton, my clients and I, even on this podcast, because pain in society in general is not even just physical pain. It's grief and it's motherhood. It's hard or whatever it might be. As a society, we love to avoid it or to numb it or to just pretend it's not happening. But I do see a bit of a shift. It needs to be more of a shift that we are kind of coming out on the other side and talking about our pain more. And grief in general is, that's unexpressed love. That's love. Where there's pain, there's love. And in our deepest pain is when we do open that portal. Grief and pain is a portal. And even when I look back, my closest moments to the babies I lost and to how I'm truly feeling. And in like feeling into like my deepest heart work was always in those moments of like tremendous pain, right?
Yeah.
It really is a portal. At birth as well. Like we're scared to be in pain. All kinds, right?
All kinds. Yeah. Emotional, physical, and, not to conflate, I remember reading somewhere, a doctor or someone saying like, well, my job is to alleviate pain. So like, that's what I'm supposed to do. And we've so lost sight of like making distinctions, in pain. And I remember somebody likening it to like, well, does that mean I shouldn't, use pain medication to get a cavity filled? I'm like, can we think a little more, bro? Like a cavity fill is not a natural process. Right? Like this is not something that, that you're working on in a very different way. But I do also know people who won't take Novocaine because they feel like they can, manage that pain themselves. So I'm
a spectrum, right? Yeah, it's a spectrum. And you also have to decide which pain is like possible and tolerable for you versus other ones, right? Like some of us,
exactly.
I do know, like when I gave birth to my stillborn daughter, I wanted to feel pain because I was like, I want to feel the whole breadth of this experience. Like I want to feel labor. I want to be a part of this whole experience. I don't want to be numbed to that. I want it to open me. I want it to be this portal to her. And a lot of people view, birth in that way. But some of us, it could be too challenging and that's okay too, right? Like I would never go to the dentist and not use pain meds. So.
Exactly. Like that's a threshold for me that I'm no.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to do that. So so born out of this work and then, then it's supporting. All right. So yes, I decided I wanted to follow through with consciousness and presence and make some of these choices that aren't the norm. Right. And our world isn't set up to accept that. And then when we bump up against even unexpectedly, like the loss of a child, and how much the way the world or our culture is set up not to support, loss or not to support some of these other ways of being and give them their due. That's where this work, was the other main reason I, would love for, when women are preparing for it, the more you can know yourself and have this strong core sense of self. And then, through a motherhood journey, I mean, you're going to get, this is where getting, unsolicited advice or I was told I was selfish and reckless to have a home birth, right? By a dad of one of my, when my daughter was just little, sharing our stories. It's like, well, and I talk to women who don't, have children, like, oh, are you going to have children? And why not? And of course you should, how you deal with society and culture. The more you know yourself and have practiced some of those muscles of standing, firm in what your values are, what your beliefs are, what your vision is for yourself. Like it's still not comfortable. You don't like people, saying these kinds of things, but they don't have to change. You can discern them, right? You can absorb them and name it to tame it. Like, ow, that hurts. I'm not saying it might not still hurt, but we can navigate the emotions and the disagreement from family or friends for the choices you're making, and really start arming ourselves, with some of that. So, we aren't just, kind of swayed by, and particularly in motherhood and, birth, pregnancy, where there's a lot of experts out there and a lot of people who, in addition to your family and friends, want to tell you this is how it's done or that, but to really be able to tune into yourself, your intuition, your inner voice, that took a long time for me to get online, to have been silenced, so long. And I still work on it, right? This is never
lifelong journey.
It's a lifelong journey. Yeah, for sure.
So this obviously led to your this discovery and doing your dissertation on this obviously led to your TED Talk, and then it led to a book. What was that kind of journey like, getting this message out into the world?
Yeah, it was vulnerable. I remember when I finished, so there was doing, a lot of gut wrenching work, like getting the dissertation done, just from an intellectual standpoint. I'd never pushed myself that far. That broke a lot of beliefs to also like, the inner work that was going on. But then to like step out of it and say like, oh, like I did this so I could share it with people. Like, oh, like I was literally terrified for a year. I worked on a keynote talk to give, and but I knew I just had to keep coming back to like people you have shared this with, the women you've worked with have found value in it. So keep going. And it also, I will say, having kids and not wanting to, I could have made a choice not to do this. I really wanted to give up on the dissertation a couple times. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, what am I modeling for my children, to like, oh, this is hard, I'm going to stop, kind of thing. So it did, you need these kind of sometimes outside nudges to keep you going. But I just kept feeling like, when those doubts would come up. And so, just along the way, starting to do workshops and talks and, having women receive it so beautifully and talk about the impact of just having these kind of conversations and being more open about this and what it could bring them, fueled me, such that it started a podcast first, right? Like just that's another way to get the word out, right?
Let's dip our toe in this.
Let's dip our toe in that. That was during COVID. So that was, kind of like a COVID way to get it out there. Mm-hmm. And then I decided I really wanted to start doing retreats because I really wanted to get women into immersives where they could really see what it's like to mother themselves and kind of return to that, because that was a big gap that I was finding in the women I was working with, that everyone, no matter how much we know we're supposed to put our oxygen masks out first, we don't do it. So we have some work to do on practicing that. And then it just that, one of those, I always knew I wanted to write a book about it, or that I should, but that should kind of turned into like, this feels like the right next move. And I'd always had on my list doing a TEDx talk, and I'd apply and different things would happen. And so I was like, I'd kind of set it aside, but I was actually invited to do the one I did in Ojai, California. So I'm like, well, of course I will do that. Right. And then it was such a learning, growing. I really took on the concepts more heartily than I had in a while when I was writing the book, putting myself back into it and learning and healing as I wrote it. And, but then again, you have these moments where it's like, oh my God, this is going out in the world. Like, oh, I have no control over this, right? Like when people are in my workshop and stuff, I get to see their reaction, right? I get to like know what people are thinking and stuff, but oh my God, it's going to be out there and I'm so exposed. And, just that work over the years to tune into myself and return back to the like bigger why, right? And what's my vision? And I really want women to have more choices. I want them to know that we're not, that there's so much more possible and available for us. So keep going, right? That's kind of what the book came out, this year in May. And it's like, wow, now it's like that was a whole journey, like birthing and, writing and birthing a book. And now it's like, now you raise the baby, right? Now it's like, continuing to talk about it and things like self-promotion and stuff. You're just like, okay, you're always up against,
right? The next era.
The next era of doing this work. But it's really the people who, when they respond. And I remember actually it was Marianne Williamson who I had the lesson to be able to talk to a couple times. And, a couple months before the book came out, I'm just like, I'm so scared and this and that, I'm like, am I doing all the things I should, like, what do I do? And she's like, Gertrude, she's like, first of all, the publishing industry is just, it's a thing, right? Like that's just its own,
I'm sure.
its own thing. She's like, but I really have come to believe like two things. Like one, if selling books is really about, if you love your book and you're behind it and passionate about it, people will resonate. Like that's what sells books. Like you can do all the other things, some of them, but keep it, it in mind that it's really you, and you being in it. But that if it impacts one person, it's already impacted me. But if it impacts one other person, you've done the job of a book.
Totally.
And it's like,
Well, and it's an energy too, right? Like people love knowing people's stories. People love, and they feel that passion, that energy, that hard work. That's why ChatGPT is like not that helpful all the time, because we know that's a robot. It's not someone's like soul and their heart and their passion, right? It's so different. So I'm sure Marianne Williamson, she knows what she's talking about, right?
I think she knows a little bit about publishing books and getting them out there and believing in a message. So it was really heartening to be able to, take, and it's still, you have to work on it, right? Because you're like, how many books have I sold? Or like, like the whole masculine paradigm of numbers.
What are the reviews saying?
Followers and exactly. And you can get, it's just so easy to get
get stuck.
It's stuck and lost in that. And
totally.
So to have, someone like her be able to put a perspective, right?
For sure. I'd love to ask you some questions that I'm sure people would, love to pick your brain a little bit. And I'm sure a lot of these answers will be in your book, which we will include in the show notes for sure. But one thing I really see a lot in this community that I serve, for the moms who have welcomed their babies, for the ones who are on that path to hopefully welcoming an earthside child, is that they're doing things right. Am I mothering right? Am I doing the right steps? I'd love to hear, how do you define motherhood, beyond that physical act of raising a child? I know we tapped into that a little bit, but I'd really love to know, like, how can women, especially women who have lost a baby, still be able to see themselves in a, deeply and honored way?
Well, just speaking about it the way you have in the question, right, is so beautiful and honors it. Just that we get to, that it's important enough to ask that question and be in it. And, what I have become definitely an advocate of is defining motherhood on our terms, right? The subtitle of the book, From Sacrifice to Stardust, came out of, eons, thousands of years of us being wired that motherhood is sacrifice, right? And like, that's what it's pain, it's sacrifice. And that's like this limited belief of what we can expect from it. And, I really want us to, when I've talked to some women who I feel like really get like the layers of that I was trying to come across within the book, which is, motherhood is a healing modality. Motherhood is it's a noun, it's a verb, it's an identity. I do believe all those things, but I also believe it's its own portal, right? It's an expansive experience that we get to tie ourselves to and connect with the ultimate creation. Like we are the original creators, when we have this opportunity. I see us, in motherhood as the cosmic, the other part of the subtitle is a cosmic approach to motherhood, meaning, if we really can work on some of these beliefs and external beliefs around what we're told how you should be when you lose a child, or how you should feel when you experience something in your motherhood journey, that there's anybody telling you how it should or should not be. well, first of all, don't listen to them. But second, nobody knows. Nobody is you. Nobody else like can have your experience.
Mm-hmm.
So the more I'm willing to define what I want that to be, or honor what my experience is and have it. And I love what you said, about no pain medication when you are giving birth to your stillborn child. It's like, I wanted to feel all of that when that's a moment where many people in our culture would say, like, just put me out. Like, this is too painful, too sad. I don't want to, but to turn toward it and get that when we do that, we don't, I think we're in that mother energy when we're willing to be in the unknown, when we're willing to like step into, spaces that we don't have experience in, but we know is going to bring us something, whether it's
that are really uncomfortable, right?
And that are really uncomfortable, no matter what, that we know are going to be uncomfortable, and to trust and know that, some of the things that I write in the book are when we can get past that cultural wiring and that family wiring, then we can connect with I call them the cosmic codes. And those you can define for yourself. But I give as an examples, that pain is a portal, that we are all connected, that you're a vessel of love, and I'm kind of rattling these off, and obviously they, have a lot more import and meaning, but we can connect to some of these, higher consciousness concepts with it that we lose sight of or lose touch with when we're, a little too earthbound ourselves, and have that fully human experience, but also understand, that we're made from stardust, that we're part of a big universe, that, pain is our portal, that, and even that self-mothering is a sacred experience, that your pleasure, your desires is sacred. So you're, any one woman's experience is the experience she gets to have with loss, with, the thing that she, this thing that a culture is trying to tell us there's a right way to do it, when, there's also a zillion books on there. And I really hoped that my book didn't come across as one that's telling you how to do motherhood, but giving you permission to have the motherhood that you want. So that was a really long answer to your.
That's okay. I also, question. You brought up self-motherhood. So I really want to speak to the women who, and I know you've brought this up in our conversation already, to the women who want to feel, I know you had that epiphany, right? Where you're like, I am enough. This is my family. I am a woman, whether or not I bring a child into this world. I am a mother. Can you speak towards like what that shift was like, and like how women who might be in the same position as you can start mothering themselves? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. Well, and I think the first part is, when I had that epiphany, it wasn't like, oh, everything's fine now, all good, like just carry on. I think that the big opening that sometimes those can have for you, or when our experience doesn't fit the picture that we thought it was going to be, or the ease that we thought it was going to be, is first of all to let yourself mourn the loss of that picture, of that, this isn't, it already hasn't been, and it isn't. And I might, facing decisions that I didn't think I would ever have to face, or experiences I ever did. And to have a tremendous amount of patience. And this is, I ended up making an acronym of this, but patience, self-affirmation, compassion, and trust, right? And building practices, awarenesses around that, like treating yourself like you would treat, someone you care about. And, there's plenty of evidence to say what that is and what that's about. But I think the biggest thing is to let yourself be as tender with yourself and as emotional, understanding that, that pain will ebb, and ebb and flow, and immerse yourself in the experience. And then later you'll get to, you can learn, you can kind of look and learn, like, what am I, what is the silver lining? And then make decisions from that place. Right. Because I think sometimes we can get, too swept up in like what this, right way is, or what we thought, how it was supposed to look. And when we don't get it, we either, give up. And I've also, coached some women who, had decided that they didn't want to have, that what didn't look like it was going to happen for them. And I coached them as a couple, but to look at, okay, well, what if we declare that, right? What if we say we're drawing the line in the sand and we are going to be child free? Like sometimes giving yourself, and then deal with the feelings that came up by making a choice. Because sometimes we don't make a choice, and then the choice just makes itself and you just kind of wander through. But when we make a solid choice, then we can deal with all the things that come up around that choice. So
it's true.
Yeah.
No, one thing you also brought up was talking about generational, trauma or inherited stories and patterns. For the mothers who have endured loss, how do generational beliefs around, that resilience or maybe the silence or expression impact the way that they might grieve? How could you speak towards that?
Yeah, I think, what immediately came to mind is just like our culture has wanted to silence us around our pain and giving birth, just
numb it.
Let's numb that. Let's mute it. It's the same thing happens, I think, when we experience loss. It's like, it's so uncomfortable for everyone around that we've just acclimated to some mistaken belief that it's like, just pick yourself up by your bootstraps, which is impossible, by the way. It's like literally not even a thing you can do. Is again, the awareness that what people are saying and how they're being around you does not have to dictate your experience.
Right. Well, I think it does kind of go in with the other two questions, right? Of like that self-mothering, like if you are being able to show up to yourself as a self-mothering person in your life, and you are giving yourself permission to do things a little bit differently, that kind of ties into
the same thing. Yeah, exactly. And just as in motherhood, having a child, not having a child, it's, one of the big self-mothering is allowing support, but allowing support that actually, really does uplift you, nourish you, supports the choices and decisions that you're making, and one that, definitely has room for you to have whatever full feelings you're going to have and ebb and flow through for forever, really. But, particularly in the beginning, that there's no timeline dictated for this. And, to be able to stand in that awareness for yourself and ask for the kind of support that you want and need.
Deserve, right?
And deserve, for sure.
If a mother listening today, could take just one small step to feel just a little bit more supported or grounded or whatever that might be, what would you say that step should be? I mean, other than,
because now that we've talked about so many things, right? Yeah, well, of course, buying the book and, listening to my TED Talk, like that's the first step. No, I think if I think about just like, ooh, you just listen to this, like, what's something I can do right now? And no matter where, this is something I start a lot of my workshops with, is I have people introduce themselves and say, I am a mother. And then sit with whatever feelings that comes when you give yourself, that space, and it's going to stir up, any range of things. And just see what it feels like to let yourself be with that and have those feelings and affirm yourself.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's everyone could do that. I know one thing that comes up a lot is I always, what's the word? I always call my clients a mother. I'll just say like, hi, mother, hi, mama, whatever. Refer to them. That's the word. I always refer to them as a mother. And some of them are like, oh, no one has ever said that to me before because like they've lost their baby. And it's just something that, society doesn't view them maybe as a mother. So I love this exercise. I think there could be a lot of beautiful uncovering from doing that. And
exactly.
Sit on it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a beautiful place for us to wrap up. And
thank you.
I would love to hear from everyone who does that exercise, what comes up from them, because I feel like, that could just be so beautiful to see what you're sitting with. And so grateful for our conversation. I feel like I could sit here and talk all day, but I know that you're in a beautiful place and you probably want to go explore the beaches, and we'll have to definitely chat again. Where can the women listening, dive a little bit deeper into your work or be able to,
for sure,
connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a website and it's www.Dr. Gertrude Lyons, Lyons.com. And so, you get to tool around there and, see how you can, my book is available everywhere. The TED Talk's accessible there. The, a bit of information about my coaching and my retreats and my podcast. And I also have a Substack, Rewrite the Mother Code. My podcast is called Rewrite the Mother Code. And on Instagram, I'm at Dr. Gertrude Lyons. So either Dr. Gertrude Lyons or Rewrite the Mother Code will take you somewhere to me.
We'll definitely include those links in the show notes.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gertrude. We are so appreciative of just like sitting in your wisdom and your gifts and being challenged by some of the new perspectives that some of us maybe have never heard before. And I know a lot of the women listening today are going to walk away with some, fresh feelings and some things that they could definitely look into. And just hearing that they're a mother, that in itself is a really big one. So just thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, thanks for having me, Kristin. It's been a blessing.
You're so welcome.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If this episode touched your heart, it would mean the world to me if you took a moment to rate and review The Rainbow Connection. Your words help this podcast reach other mothers who need to hear these stories, the ones still searching for hope, for comfort, and for connection after loss. Every review, every star, every kind word truly makes a difference. Thank you for helping me keep these stories alive. I'll see you in the next episode.